Annie Kasprzak was just 15 years old when her life was tragically cut short. Born in January 1997, Annie spent most of her childhood bouncing around the foster care system before being adopted by Veronica and Dennis Kasprzak at age 9. The adoption gave Annie a sense of hope, but sadly, her newfound family life quickly unraveled when her adoptive parents divorced shortly after taking her in. Annie split time living between her adoptive mom Veronica's home in Draper, Utah, and her adoptive dad Dennis's house. At Veronica's, she lived with her new stepdad James Bratcher. By all accounts, Annie had a tense relationship with her mom and stepdad. There were arguments and fights in the home that sometimes resulted in police being called. On the evening of March 10, 2012, Annie got into a heated dispute with her mom and stepdad. Around 7:45 p.m., the couple last saw Annie as she stormed off to her bedroom after the argument. An hour later, Veronica and James checked in on Annie only to find she was gone. Even more troubling, tucked under Annie's pillow was a handwritten note indicating she had run away to California. In the letter, Annie wrote that she had lied about being pregnant even though she wasn't, and that she didn't want anyone coming to look for her. Immediately after discovering the letter, Veronica called 911 to report Annie missing to the police. Investigators started piecing together Annie's last known movements and communications. After obtaining her cell phone records, they discovered her phone last pinged in an area near the Jordan River around 9:22 p.m. on the night she went missing, before going dead. Police also dug into Annie's diary, looking for clues. They learned from the diary that Annie had claimed to be pregnant by her 14-year-old boyfriend of the time, Darwin Christopher Bagshaw. Just weeks prior to her disappearance, Annie had told her parents they were having sex, leading Veronica and James to have Annie take a pregnancy test that came back negative. However, diary entries dated after the negative test indicated Christopher still believed Annie was with child. Additional entries suggested Christopher didn't want Annie to have the baby. With this background, Veronica and James theorized to police that Annie ran away out of embarrassment over the fake pregnancy. They clung to hope she might still come home, but the next morning their hopes were dashed when a jogger made a grisly discovery under a pedestrian bridge near the Jordan River, a significant amount of blood. Police responded to the scene and began scouring the area. Soon after, they located Annie's deceased body in the river. She had suffered severe blunt force trauma. It was immediately apparent this was no longer a missing persons case, but a homicide investigation. Detectives questioned Christopher, Annie's young boyfriend. Initially, Christopher denied even speaking to Annie the day she vanished, but he later backtracked and admitted they had talked on the phone that evening. However, Christopher maintained he had no clue what happened to Annie or who killed her. Christopher did tell police that in the days prior to Annie's murder, the two of them had hung out at a mutual friend's house. He said that Annie got a nosebleed while they were together, and she must have dripped blood onto him, which would explain the small blood stain discovered on one of his sneakers. Police took the shoes for forensic testing. Results showed the blood did match Annie. While Christopher Bagshaw denied involvement in Annie's death, police seemed to have evidence pointing in his direction. But they didn't immediately arrest the boy. In a bizarre turn of events, just days later, the investigation's trajectory rapidly changed when a woman named Joanna Franklin came forward, claiming she saw Annie get killed at a house party. Joanna told police 31-year-old Daniel Ferry and 30-year-old Vianuia Vayakite were responsible. She said Daniel flew into a rage and beat Annie to death, aided by Vianuia, after Annie rebuffed his sexual advances. Daniel had a violent criminal past, so investigators took the tips seriously and arrested both men for Annie's murder. With Daniel and Vianuia behind bars, police hoped they were finally on a path to getting justice for Annie. But the case was about to take many twists and turns before the real truth ultimately came out. While Daniel and Vianuia sat in jail, investigators set out to compile evidence linking them to Annie's brutal murder. Detectives thoroughly searched Daniel's home where the alleged party and murder took place. While the search uncovered ample evidence of criminal activity, nothing specifically tied to Annie turned up. Daniel was charged with drug and kidnapping offenses unearthed during the search, but critically, none related to Annie. In fact, the timeline of Daniel's other alleged crimes provided an airtight alibi. It became clear it would have been impossible for him to commit those offenses and kill Annie at the same time. As a result, Daniel and Vianuia were ruled out as suspects in Annie's homicide. Later on, Joanna Franklin would admit she fabricated seeing the men kill Annie in hopes it would help get her own existing criminal charges dropped. After months of wasted efforts chasing the wrong leads, the investigation hit a standstill. Then, newly assigned detectives decided to take a fresh look at those closest to Annie, including her boyfriend Christopher. Interviews with Annie's friends revealed that prior to her death, Annie told them she was pregnant with Christopher's child. Additionally, messages on Annie's phone indicated she and Christopher had discussed running away together after she shared the pregnancy news. Christopher's text history also yielded a suspicious message to a friend asking them to lie on his behalf about why Annie's blood was found on his shoe. The text stated, "The cops might come back to your house. I need you to tell them that Anne got a bloody nose 'cause she did, but you were lying down and she got some on my shoe and they took my shoes for testing. And I need you to tell them that, so I don't get blamed." Phone records further showed that on the night Annie went missing, her worried mother had called Christopher to see if he knew where she was. Christopher denied having any useful information. However, cell tower data indicated that call pinged just 100 meters from the location where Annie's body was discovered, likely very shortly after the murder occurred. In October 2014, over 2 years after Annie's death, Christopher Bagshaw was arrested and charged with her murder. Because Christopher was only 14 at the time, the case originally started in juvenile court but was later upgraded to adult status. In 2016, Christopher pleaded guilty to the murder charges against him. Prosecutors laid out evidence indicating Christopher became enraged and scared after Annie claimed she was pregnant with his child. They believe he lured Annie to the Jordan River under the guise they would run away together. But when they met up, Christopher attacked Annie, beating her to death with a shovel and dumping her body in the water. Christopher faced a minimum sentence of 15 years behind bars. His defense team argued for less time given his young age at the offense. However, the judge ultimately handed down the full minimum term of 15 years to life in prison. Now 18 years old, Christopher remains incarcerated today for Annie's heinous murder. The tragic story of Annie's murder that ended a life just as it was beginning still haunts those who knew her. Jennifer Kasprzak, Annie's stepmother, said of the case's resolution, "We'd love to know why, but no why or answer will really justify the action. It's not going to bring her back. May she rest in peace."